नमस्कार। मैं संदीप गर्ग, एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर in IBBI. I'll This is one of the last session in this series of sessions. I'll In this session I will take you on the journey of IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the journey done so far, and what is the road ahead. So I will try to cover a large amount of information in this session. So first of all, let me give you a background of the legal and regulatory framework which was prevalent in India uh, for dealing with stressed assets. And this framework was there before the IBC came into being. So in 1985, Sikh Industrial Companies Act, Special Provisions Act was enacted. The objective of this act was to revive the Sikh industrial companies. It was done with a view to uh, provide revival of Sikh industrial companies. It was done with the view to keep the enterprises ongoing so that the workmen and the capital does not suffer. In 1993, another act was enacted, recovery of debt due to banks and financial institutions. This was done with a view to provide recovery to the banks and financial institutions because it was felt that SICA is not able to achieve its objectives of recovery to the financial institutions. So this act was enacted. This act led to the establishment of debt recovery tribunals and debt recovery appellate tribunals. And after this act, then in 2003, 2002 SURFACE Act was enacted. So this was felt that even RDD BFI Act is not able to cater to the recovery of banks, and the enforcement of security was allowed for the security creditors, for secured creditors, direct action by direct action by them, and only the appeal of that will lie with DRT. So this was the regime prevailing before the IBC came into being. Besides this regime, RBI has also been dealing with the management of stressed assets. They had come out with corporate debt restructuring scheme in 2001. So it provided a mechanism for monitoring the non-performing assets and way to resolve them. But this was not very successful. So they came up with another scheme of revitalizing the distressed assets in the ecosystem. Even that scheme was replaced subsequently. It led to flexible restructuring of long-term project loans, and then another scheme of strategic debt restructuring, and then a S4A scheme. So a series of schemes were launched by RBI after seeing that they are getting mixed response. But the reactions were mixed. The gross NPAs were still climbing up. So a need was felt that we have to deal with the problem of insolvency comprehensively, and to deal with that, IBC was enacted in 2016. So now this dwelling further on this dysfunctional insolvency regime, as I said earlier, SICA was enacted with a view to help the debtor, the company, as well as the workmen. So while implementing the SICA, type 2 error was committed because the companies that were not viable, they were continued for long. In RDD BFI Act, this is Recovery of Debt Due to Banks and Financial Act, Financial Institutions Act. The primary objective was recovery, and in SURFACE, it was recovery for the secured creditors. So in both these acts, which were with a view keeping in mind the interest of creditors, type 1 error was committed, where even viable enterprises were forced to wind up as their productive assets were taken away. And enforcement of these acts required multiple judicial forums, and this was a situation where one set of judicial authority were hearing the rights of the acts related to rights of creditors. Another set of judicial authorities were hearing the SICA appeals, and because of that, there was a lot of litigation, and the judgments were being readily challenged in higher forums and being stayed. So there was no further action which was resulting because of implementation of these acts. So optimum insolvency path required that we provide a comprehensive legislation which deals with the interest of both creditors as well as the company, and we do so in such a manner that both type 1 and type 2 errors are minimized. That is, the firms where probability of their recovery is very, very low, they should be liquidated as fast as possible, while the companies which can be revived should be revived. So now, this kind of situation basically led to the genesis of IBC. There was basically in 2016, the atmosphere prevailing was that India was needing a lot of investments, and they were requiring an atmosphere of high competition and innovation so that India can achieve higher growth and fulfill the dreams of its people. So, but the economy was facing twin balance sheet problem. The banks NPAs, gross NPAs, which were 4.3% in March 2015, they rose up to 9% in September 2016, and they rose till say 2017. And also the companies who were to service the debts of these banks, they were also not having enough capacity. They were having just sufficient income, and their interest coverage ratio, which basically determines that how much are the profits with in relation to interest, how much are the profits, whether they are able to service their interest or not. That ratio went down below 1 by 2015. So they were not able to service their debt. So the companies, there was no freedom of exit. Companies were mired in a chakravyuh. They were not able to come out. Even the companies which was very, very sure that they are not able to come out, they have to shut down. Even they were not being able to wound up. And because of that, the ease of doing business was suffering. India's ranking, as I'll show in the statistics later, was quite low. So we needed a comprehensive solution for dealing with these situations. So a bankruptcy law reforms committee was formed in 2015, and the mandate was that we enact a comprehensive economic insolvency law which deals with all aspects of insolvency. So the Supreme Court in ArcelorMittal case has basically said that previous legislation, namely the Sikh Industrial Companies Act 1985 and the Recovery of Debt Due to Banks and Financial Institutions Act 1993, which made provision for rehabilitation of Sikh companies and repayment of loans availed by them, were found to have completely failed. This was the observations of Supreme Court in ArcelorMittal case. So With After the formation of BLRC, this code was enacted. This code was the draft of this code was given as an annexure to the as volume 2 of the report. Volume 1 contained all the uh, all the reasons why the code should be like, uh, how it should be framed, what should be the reasoning, what should be the structure around it, what are the best practices being followed internationally. So, so long title of the code is, and it says all the things which the code is meant for. It says reorganization and insolvency resolution of corporate persons in a time bound manner for maximization of value of assets of corporates. So, maximization of value is the main principle behind this act, the main principle for which all the pillars of IBC are working. And this ultimately leads to promotion of entrepreneurship. It also improves availability of credit. As creditors realize their loans, the credit becomes available to further disbursement, and then it balances the interest of all stakeholders. Government also took a very bold step in changing the priority of payments. Earlier, this priority of payments, commonly known as waterfall, required that government dues had the supreme priority and they were to be paid. But government is an institution which can take a haircut because it's a institution which is able to survive, which is able to fill its coffers by other means also, by raising revenues also, while there are stressed assets which are lying unproductive and which basically hurts the economy much more than the loss of revenue. And this act also provided for establishment of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. And these objectives which I have narrated above, this has been held to be sacrosanct by Anklet in the matter of Binani Industries. So, with these objectives, this code was formed. This code required so there was a paradigm shift between the framework which was prevalent before IBC and after IBC. So, as I said earlier, there were multiple legislation, SICA, RDD, BBFI Act, SURFACE. While all these were combined together and a insolvency legislation came into being, which is single legislation, IBC, RDD, BFI Act and SURFACE still remain, but their use has become much less after this. SICA had been repealed. Objective of earlier regime was basically either rehabilitation or recovery, but now the main objective of IBC is resolution. So, the approach which was being adopted earlier was that the management and promoters of the company remained in possession, while here in IBC approach is that creditor comes in control. So, what happens in a situation is that once the promoter is not able to pay its dues, then it loses the right to manage that company because his liability is limited. Promoter's liability is limited. He can't be made answerable to the losses of the company. If net worth is eroded, if it is in loss, while creditors are still to lose their money. So, it is the creditors who should be in control of the company once a situation has come to a pass and it has entered into insolvency. So, as I said earlier the government dues were highest, while now the government dues are below financial creditors, but they are above operational creditors. So, earlier the situation was that there was no moratorium. So, moratorium is that there is a stay on all the proceedings. Nobody can recover its dues. Nobody can institute a suit or start court proceedings against this. So what happens is that once it is known to the market that somebody is going to default, then everybody rushes in to recover his money. So in these kinds of situation, it becomes impossible to run a business. So moratorium helps by saying that, okay, now everybody has to stop, nobody can recover its money. We will give money to all by gradually recovering the money to in such a manner that all are satisfied. So there is no rush to liquidate, no rush on the assets of the corporate debtor, so that not even it doesn't happen that even productive assets are taken away. So another paradigm shift was that the timelines were specified for everything. Timelines for admission of application, timeline for asking for preparing the information memorandum, timeline for resolution. So all the timelines, etc., have been specified in the code, which was not there earlier. Another thing which happens was that in earlier, when the promoter remained in control, then even then the assets of the company were being stripped off. Now in this case, what happens is that a resolution professional becomes in charge of the company. And one becomes in charge of the company and ensures that no assets are taken away. Not only that, if the promoters have stripped some assets, even those are brought back in the fold, and it acts not only ex poste but ex ante as well. Because if somebody knows that later on his acts will be caught and assets will in any case be taken away, then it prevents promoters from taking away those assets. And this provides a cleanliness also. So what happens is now this section 29A, I'll come to it later, was introduced, which said that certain ineligible persons cannot take over the company. So if a promoter is an ineligible person, he has not paid the loans for a particular period of time, or he is a willful defaulter, then he can't come and get the company. This code also was a shift in that there was a insolvency professional which was thought of, that he will run the company. So again, it was a significant departure from previous approaches. A cadre of insolvency professional was thought of, and to manage them again, IBBI was created, that we create a cadre of insolvency professionals and regulate them. Insolvency professional agencies were created so that they become a frontline regulators of insolvency professionals and train them and monitor them. And all this mechanism was provided so that markets dominate. Most of the decisions are with the market. Earlier, the decisions were with the state. Here, all the decisions were with the market. It is the information memorandum which is prepared and resolution plans are received from the market. And it is the committee of creditors whose money is to be recovered. They decide that whether this plan is okay or not. So, in a way, it was a paradigm shift from earlier approaches. So, structure of the code had basically 5 parts and schedules. Part 1 is preliminary. Part 2 dealt with corporate insolvency resolution process. Part 3 deals with insolvency resolution of individuals and partnership firms. So part 3 has not yet been fully operationalized. Only a portion of this, which deals with personal guarantors, that has been operationalized. And then there is a part 4 provides for regulation of insolvency professionals, agencies, and information utilities. And then there are miscellaneous provisions in part 5. Schedules are in respect of the provisions of other acts which are being changed by this IBC Act. So this is the timeline of implementation of the code. In May 2016, code was enacted. ANCLET and NCLT were established. Companies under the Companies Act in 2016, June 2016. And then IBBI was established in October 2016. We just completed 6 years of our existence. In December 2016, corporate insolvency resolution provisions were started. Then corporate liquidation provisions were commenced from December 2016. In March 2017, provisions relating to financial service providers insolvency were commenced. And then personal guarantors to corporate debtor. This is one category of individuals and partnership firms whose the provisions have been started. So on this IBC, our Honorable Prime Minister has basically said, साथियों, आजकल इंसॉल्वेंसी बैंक्रप्सी कोड की इतनी चर्चा होती है, लेकिन यह सिर्फ इतना पैसा वापस आया, उतना पैसा वापस आया, यहाँ तक ही सीमित रहती है, लेकिन वो उससे भी आगे है. आप सभी ये बेहतर जानते हैं कि कुछ स्थितियों में धंधे से बाहर निकलना ही कई बार समझदारी माना जाता है. यह ज़रूरी नहीं है कि जो कंपनी सफल ना हो रही हो उसके पीछे कोई साजिश हो, कोई गलत इरादा हो, कोई लालच हो. ये ज़रूरी नहीं है. देश में ऐसे उद्यमियों के लिए एक रास्ता तैयार करना आवश्यकता था और आईबीसी ने इसका आधार तैयार किया. आज नहीं तो कल इस बात पर अध्ययन जरूरी होगा कि आईबीसी ने कितने भारतीय उद्यमियों का भविष्य बचाया और उन्हें हमेशा के लिए बर्बाद होने से रोका. So this is what the Honorable PM had said about IBC. For operationalizing this code, we required a lot of new entities to be created, a lot of new institutions to be created. So as I said, as we see, there were 2 benches of NCLAT. They were created. Then 1 principal bench plus 15 jurisdictional benches of National Company Law Tribunal, they were created. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, it was established as a regulator. Then there was service providers which were being regulated. They were, the one NESL is there. Then there are 3 insolvency professional agencies. These insolvency professional agencies were created by tie-ups with the Chartered Accountant Institute, Company Secretary Institute, and Cost and Management Accountant Institute. So within a very short span of time, we were able to create the capacity of insolvency professionals, and now we have around 4,000 plus insolvency professional. We have 16 registered value organizations. We have more than 5,000 plus registered valuers, which are being regulated by IBBI. I'll take you through the corporate insolvency resolution process so that you can understand basically how the process is undergone, how the resolution of the companies happens. So what happens is, once the company has been admitted into insolvency, the interim resolution professional is appointed and the process begins. Once this is admitted, then moratorium also comes into play. Now nobody can recover its money, no money can be paid to any creditors, and this creates an environment where resolution can happen. Also, it is mandated that all the essential supplies, all the business goes as usual. It should not happen that business is hampered. So all essential supplies, all critical supplies, they continue. The insolvency professional, after coming into his saddle, he then issues a public announcement, and then he receives claims in response to this public announcement. After collation of those claims, he knows that how much money is to be paid to what is the position of each creditor. So based on how much percentage share each creditor is having in the total debt, then the voting share of COC, Committee of Creditors, is decided, and then he constitutes a Committee of Creditor, and a meeting of Committee of Creditor takes place. And this Committee of Creditors basically acts as a board of directors of the company during the period insolvency resolution is taking place. They take all the major decisions, while this insolvency professional runs the day-to-day activity of the company, and also day-to-day process of the insolvency process also he runs. He acts as the CEO of the company. So this interim resolution professional, this was chosen by the creditor who had filed this application for admission. But now, when all the creditors have come into place, they may like to even replace him. They may continue with him, or they may like to replace him. So once they confirm him, he becomes a resolution professional. Otherwise, he is replaced and another resolution professional takes over. This resolution professional then looks at all the liabilities, all the material contracts of the company, and prepares an information memorandum. This information memorandum is a very important document, which is then given to the market that they can see and give resolution plans. So the resolution applicants are encouraged so that they can come and tell that what are their resolution plans. First of all, he invites the expression of interest, and after inviting expression of interest, he finds that these are the prospective bidders. He issues information memorandum to them. He requests for resolution plans from them. After receipt of plans, he says whether these plans are compliant, and all the compliant plans are then given to the Committee of Creditors for approval. Once Committee of Creditors approves a plan, this plan is submitted to the adjudicating authority, which is the National Company Law Tribunal, for approval. And if there are no such plans, then in that case, the company is liquidated. The company then enters a liquidation phase. So the first priority of the code is resolution. If that does not happen, then it enters into a liquidation phase, liquidation process. This approval of the plan by the adjudicating authority ensures that there is a judicial oversight of the whole process. There were several amendments which have been carried out to keep the spirits of the code alive, and the government has been very, very responsive. Whenever a situation has happened in the market that this requires some amendment to deal with a particular kind of a situation, that they have been done very swiftly. So first amendment had basically categorized this individuals and firms into three categories. They were categorized into personal guarantors and another business concerns, the partnership and proprietorship firms, and other individuals. So they were categorized into three categories. This categorization made possible that this part 3 is operated only in respect of personal guarantors, because still the code is not fully operational. As I say, part 3 is only operational in respect of personal guarantors. The institutions are being tested even for this. So probably with the learning of this insolvency resolution for corporates, we will proceed further and then implement the code, the part 3 of the code as well. Another amendment which took place was in respect of section 29A. This basically prevented the ineligible persons from being the resolution applicants. So some of the disqualifications were that if somebody is a willful defaulter, he is not paying the loan willfully, then he can't be a resolution applicant. If somebody has NPA for more than 1 year, he can't be a resolution applicant. Somebody is prohibited from trading in securities by SEBI, he can't be a resolution applicant. Somebody has been convicted of an offense for more than sentenced for more than 2 years, he can't be a resolution applicant. Then somebody who has been in case of avoidance, some avoidance transactions have been identified against him, and A passes an order that he has done those avoidance transactions, then he can't be a resolution applicant. So persons with doubtful antecedents have been prevented. This this actually enabled the shift companies. Earlier, the promoters were taking for granted that nobody can take over the companies from them. And when the companies were taken over from big corporates, it was became very clear that if the companies do not pay their debts in time and they default and they regularly default and they willfully default, then they will be these companies will go out of their management and control. This really created a sense of discipline among them. So this after this first amendment, second amendment was again brought through ordinance, and this act was passed in 2018. Here again a significant amendment was that home buyers were made financial creditors. So in one of the judgments, Supreme Court has held Chitra Sharma versus Union of India in the case of JP Infra. It was held that they are the persons who are, these allottees are the persons who are giving money to the corporates, and they should be considered as financial creditors. So in response to that judgment, the home buyers were made financial creditors. In fact, Insolvency Law Committee was already considering the suggestion based on some previous judgments of Anklet. And after this judgment, amendment it was brought quickly by way of an ordinance. Also, some other key amendments were taken up. The voting threshold was reduced from 75% to 66% for major decisions and 51% for ordinary decisions. So it was felt that basically what is happening is that approval of a resolution plan requires a voting threshold of 75%. So what was happening was that in some cases, because of the voting percentage being so high, the companies were being liquidated. That the resolution plans were not getting approved. They were getting say 70%, but not getting 75%. So because of that, they were getting liquidated. So from seeing this experience, basically this amendment was brought. Then Supreme Court has also intervened in one case that there was no provision that somebody can withdraw the corporate insolvency resolution process. So even if somebody wanted to pay something, pay the loan, but even then the withdrawal was not happening. And because of that, some such cases were getting piled up in Supreme Court. So Supreme Court in one of the cases suggested that the government should look at it and provide for a withdrawal provision. So a withdrawal provision was provided that when 90% of the creditors decide that no, we should withdraw this process, then the process would be withdrawn. Then some guarantors were taking advantage of the moratorium. That some of the judgments came. Most prevalent view was this: personal guarantors, they are not, they can't take the benefit of moratorium. But few judgments came because of this. It became necessary to amend that personal guarantors are not protected by moratorium. So if a company has taken a loan from a bank, and it has been guaranteed by its promoters, then it is a well-established law that proceedings can be initiated against the company as well as against the promoters. And promoters should not be protected because that's a coextensive liability they suffer. So this was clarified through this amendment. Then the special regime was brought up for micro, small and medium enterprises. So section 29A was relaxed for MSMEs. It's not that all ineligibilities have been relaxed, but few ineligibilities, like a personal guarantor in a case where the person has defaulted, those ineligibility, as well as the ineligibility in respect of NPA being more than 1 year, that has been relaxed by section 240A. Besides, this has created a special regime for MSMEs where the government has been given the power that they can notify that some of the provisions will specifically apply to MSMEs and some of the provisions will not apply to MSMEs. So this special regime has been created in respect of MSMEs. Again, Limitation Act has been made applicable to IBC. Then third amendment, almost we had one amendment every year. In the third amendment, one of the key amendments was that the process should be completed in 330 days. So what it requires is that the timelines have been specified in the code, that process has to be completed in 180 days. And if it is not completed in 180 days, then one extension of 90 days can be granted. So the whole process has to be completed in 270 days. But Supreme Court in a matter has ruled that judicial time taken while the proceedings are stayed, all this time should be excluded. So an amendment was brought that even after including judicial time should not exceed 330 days. But even this provision which was brought has been held to be directory. But the courts have been directed that extension should happen only in exceptional cases. Then another provision was made that if the admission of the application, timeline has been provided that the NCLT has to decide the admission of application in 14 days. And if they are not able to decide, then they have to record their reasons in writing. Another amendment which was brought was that there has to be a fair and equitable distribution of the resolution proceeds. So same category of creditor should get the same percentage of the loans collected. So their satisfaction ratio should be same. And this committee of creditors which I mentioned earlier, this is constituted by financial creditors. So operational creditors are not part of this committee. So they are not in the decision making seat. Also, some of the creditors may not agree with the majority decision of COC. So they become dissenting financial creditor. So to ensure that these operational creditors who are not part of COC, committee of creditors, and the dissenting financial creditors who are not agreeing with the majority decision, their interest should be protected. For that, it was made that they should be given some minimum, some liquidation value, they should be given a minimum entitlement were defined. Then it was said that in cases of classes of creditors, the decision will be by present and voting. And then resolution plan was made binding on everyone. It was specifically said that it will apply on government authorities as well. Then again in end of 2019, we had the fourth amendment. And basically it was, here we said that there will not be, it was basically there, but it was specifically clarified that there will not be any termination of licenses, permits and grants. So any company which are say doing mining, its license to mine should not be terminated because of insolvency. If it is able to pay its current dues, then it should not be terminated. Then section 32A provided immunity from past misdeeds. So the new promoters and the company, they are provided immunity from past offenses of the company. While the old promoters are still liable, but the new promoters have been provided this immunity. Then for resolution of financial service providers also, the regime was facilitated. After COVID, the fifth amendment was brought, and this basically prevented initiation of insolvency proceedings for 6 months period, and then subsequently increased so that it does not happen that because of COVID, if people are not able to pay, even then the insolvency is initiated. Then after COVID also, it was felt that we should probably bring a regime so that MSMEs have a better process So prepackaged insolvency regime was created in respect of corporate MSMEs. This prepackaged scheme was basically both a formal as well as informal scheme. So it is informal up to a point where the promoter as well as 66% of the creditors, they basically decide that what should be the plan, how should you go about it, and they submit it, and the admission of the insolvency process is then initiated, and then the process becomes formal. Here, debtor remains in possession. It's not the resolution professional who is taking the day-to-day decision, but it is the insolvency professional, but it is the promoter who is running the business. But process is being run by insolvency professional, and it is the committee of creditors who is taking the decisions. So, in this scheme, basically a preference has been given to the promoter. So, he basically gives a base resolution plan, but this base resolution plan, if it is not sufficiently better than other plans being offered by other resolution applicants, then this plan can be challenged by others, and then promoters has to match this. If he can't match it, then the company goes to a person who offers a better value, again maximizing the value. So within the basic structure of the code, which is basically the creditors remain in control, it is the COC which takes the major decisions, and then the moratorium remains available so that there is not a run on the company, and then there is a binding nature of the approved resolution plan so that everybody takes a haircut, and after that the dues of the company are absolved. The company is new promoters, or the company is absolved of past dues. So the resolution plan becomes binding. All these crucial elements are still there. This, as I said, it commences with 60% majority, the consent of majority of the financial creditors, and a special majority of shareholders. Resolution professional sees the process, not the business. Committee of creditors decides the matters, commercial matters, and this process, because there is a lot of legwork which has already been done, this has been mandated to be completed in 90 days. And then there are adequate checks and balances to prevent any abuse. So in one of the largest cases, one of the most successful cases, it is SR Steel, and in this case, basically we had realization percentage, 77% of the claims, they were realized. So this IBC, what has been the outcome of IBC? There has been a very, very positive impact on the credit culture. As you can see from the statistics before you, that almost 85% of the cases are getting resolved on the way. What is happening is that applications are filed, and then in many cases, the promoters of the company come for settlement. That there is a credible threat that they will lose management of the company, control of the company. So most of the cases, they are settled. So out of 38,000 cases, you can see almost 22,000 cases have been withdrawn before admission. Around 10,000 cases are pending. Process has commenced in about 5,500 cases plus. Also, even after admission, some of the cases have been closed. Around 1,500 cases have been closed midway, wherein I mentioned the withdrawal of the insolvency can happen with 90% majority of committee of creditor. So in 1,500 cases, these cases have been settled either with withdrawal or by appeal, etc. So the process where in the liquidation we have got around 1,30,000 crores. In resolution we have got 2,35,000 crores. Ongoing processes are around 2,000 processes which are ongoing. This has basically brought a major shift in the behavior of promoters of the company. As you can see here, almost 22,000 cases have been, more than 22,000 cases have been withdrawn before admission itself. And these involved a significant amount of 7 lakh crores, more than 7 lakh crores. And these are claims of only those creditors who had filed that application. So uh, if they would have come into insolvency and invited claims from other creditors, this amount would have been even much larger. So this basically drawn a comment from the Honorable FM at that point of time, FM and Minister of Corporate Affairs, that this early process through the IBC process has been extremely satisfactory. It has changed the debtor creditor relationship. The creditor no longer chases the debtor. In fact, it is otherwise. So the equation was completely changed. So rescue of distressed assets. Again, the figures are astounding here. So what we can see is that lot of lot of assets have been resolved. 2,35,000 crore worth of assets have been resolved. Around 30%, 31% claims have been satisfied. Average time which has been taken is 460 days. And while the cost of resolution, the resolution cost is quite low, it's less than 1%. The liquidation has happened in a lot of companies. As you can see, they outnumber the companies which have been resolved. But we were having legacy of cases. The cases which were earlier there in SICA, they were all transferred to IBC. So in all such cases, most of the cases liquidation have happened. So there have been an improvement in NPA. NPA scenario has basically increased. NPA has continuously come down. This was 11.2% in financial year 17-18. It has come down to less than 6% in June 2022. The graph also shows that IBC has contributed a lot in the recovery of assets. So this graph basically shows the share of NPA which has been recovered through various mechanisms like IBC, SARFAESI, Lok Adalats, etc. So in 2021, you can see that there is a dip in IBC. So basically there was the cases were not being admitted in IBC while other recovery actions were still being taken. So that explains that dip. Also, what has happened is that there has been resolution applicants have not been coming forward. The distressed asset market has also taken a hit because of constraint of liquidity, etc. People are shy, so investments have dried up. So if we see the outcome, so we can see that the withdrawal of applications, they have contributed to about 7,30,000 crores. 2,35,000 crores have been resolved through resolution, and liquidation has contributed to about 3,000 crores, and 4,400 crores worth of assets have been voluntarily liquidated. So total has been this total is probably wrong. So total is around 10 lakh crores worth of assets have been recovered, realized through IBC. So Supreme Court in Swiss Raban, seeing these outcomes, had remarked, "We are happy to note that in the working of the code, the flow of financial resources to the commercial sector in India has increased exponentially as a result of financial debt being repaid. The experiment conducted in enacting the code is proving to be largely successful. The defaulter's paradise is lost. In its place, the economy's rightful position has been regained." India also gained in global recognition and rankings. Our ranking in insolvency indicator was 136 in 2017, and it came down to 52 in 2020. And this was a big contributor for India's score in World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. Uh, the outcomes are ranks improved from 136 to 52. Recovery rate increased significantly. Recovery time declined significantly. We won the Global Restructuring Review Award for the most improved jurisdiction in 2018. And Global Innovation Index, India's position in case of resolving insolvency improved from 95 in 2015 to 47 to 2020. So this has IBC has been able to significantly improve India's position. Uh, this code has been able to change the behavior of promoters. It has been able to rescue lives of companies. It has ensured utilization of resources in an optimum manner, which has basically indirectly contributed for development of entrepreneurship and development of credit market. And I also contributed in the interest rates coming down. There are other factors, but this is also one of the factors which has contributed in the same. So in the economic survey, seeing all this in 2021-22 economic survey, uh, it, it has been said that fact that a CD may change hands has changed the behavior of debtors. Thousands of debtors are resolving distress in the early stages of distress, either when the default is imminent on receipt of a notice for repayment but before filing an application, or after filing the application but before its admission, and even after admission of the application and making best effort to avoid consequences of the resolution process. So impact on the economy has been positive. Impact on creditors has also been positive. Financial creditors have also behaved very responsibly. They are now initiating the insolvency process well in time. They have also been beneficiary of higher realization and lower NPAs as a consequence. There have been enhanced realization for operational creditors also. In fact, most of the applications, 74% of the applications have been filed by operational creditors. And not only that, the withdrawal rate is much more in case of applications being filed by operational creditors, which basically indicating that most of them are getting settled, and because maybe their loans are smaller loans, and so the promoters are able to settle those loans easily, and hence it is leading to withdrawal of the application. And they are realizing the proceedings even after serving the notice. Even this performance is not in fact been captured in IBC, because in case of operational creditors, first of all, they have to give a notice to the company that my debt has not been paid. This is a notice. If you don't respond to this notice, or if you don't repay my dues, then I'll go to IBC. So if a dispute is resolved, if he gets paid before initiation of the process, then this is not even captured in the statistics which I have given you. But market tells that this is happening. Then there has been impact on corporate debtors as well, companies as well. There has been a responsible behavior on their part. This has led to revival of companies. More than lot many companies have been revived, either through resolution or liquidation or voluntary liquidation. Moratorium helps in a big way, because that basically prevents institution of proceedings. It enables that business goes as a going concern. Then the clean slate principle, which was brought in by section 32A by way of amendment, it basically states that the new promoters which come in, they are not responsible for past liabilities, and this has basically created a lot of certainty and brought them in. Then there have been some of the systems, and it has established certain structures like committee of creditors. An institution has been created. It is unregulated, and probably there is a need for code of conduct for creditors. So there has been some discussion on this issue. And there is a need for capacity building so that they take adequate decisions. Then one of the main markets, one of the main gain of this code has been development of insolvency professionals. So here a new cadre of professionals called insolvency professional has been created, which is regulated by IBBI and then insolvency professional agencies. In fact, in economic survey, again, it was remarked that with the enactment of IBC, India has witnessed the birth of two professions, namely the insolvency profession and the valuation profession, that have professional insolvency services. This has created markets for services of insolvency professionals, registered valuers, insolvency professional entities, and expanded the scope of services of advocates, accountants, and other professionals. IBBI and IPAs both are taking action for ensuring that insolvency professionals perform well. They perform within the bounds of law. So, a lot of regulatory actions have been taken. There have been certain capacity constraints in terms of NCLT. Some of the vacancies are there, which is basically, and the case load is ever increasing. You will be amazed to know that a lot of interlocutory applications are filed. So in a case, and on an average 5 to 10 applications, interlocutory applications are there. So a lot of litigation basically brings down the decision-making process of the NCLT. And this has led to large pendencies, and they are not able to adhere to the timelines. There have been delays. I'll not dwell into statistics. We have, as a result of this IBC, we have been able to create a new institution called Information Utility. So NESL is National E-Services Limited is the information utility, which is a product of this code. Here basically all the creditors submit information of loans, debt, as well as default to the information utility. It sends this information to the companies so that they can authenticate that information. And once that company authenticates that information, they give the response, then this information is again shared with the creditor. So if any default happens and if it is confirmed, then basically that default is communicated to all. A record of default is generated and it is communicated to all. So all creditors then get to know that this company is defaulting. One should be careful in its dealings. So this is one new institution which has been created by IBC. So I can go on and on, but a lot of things have happened since the creation of IBC, and a lot is yet to happen, because still resolution of companies is taking time. But we as a regulator as well as the government is aware of the difficulties, and we are working overtime that so that we are able to resolve the issue. The number of amendments done both to the code as well as to the regulations are a preview to that we have been able to respond to the market challenges. In fact, one of the accusations has been that we have been too proactive. Probably we are meddling the affairs too much. So that is an accusation at us. But this is a code which requires to keep pace with the market. Otherwise, we will not be able to justify that. IBC recently, Honorable FM had said in her address that IBC should not lose its sheen, and we are all working towards it. Thank you.
बिछड़े चमन तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान, तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी शान है मेरे प्यारे वतन, ने मेरे बिछड़े चमन तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम, तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम, चूम लूँ मैं उस ज़ुबां को जिस पे आए तेरा नाम, सबसे प्यारी सुबह तेरी, सबसे रंगी तेरी शाम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान, तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। माँ का दिल बन के कभी सीने से लग जाता है तू, माँ का दिल बन के कभी सीने से लग जाता है तू, और कभी नन्ही सी बेटी बन के याद आता है तू, जितना याद आता है मुझको उतना तड़पाता है तू, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान, तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। छोड़ कर तेरी ज़मीं को दूर आ पहुँचे हैं हम, छोड़ कर तेरी ज़मीं को दूर आ पहुँचे हैं हम, फिर भी है यही तमन्ना तेरे ज़र्रों की कसम, हम जहाँ पैदा हुए उस जगह ही निकले दम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान, तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान, ऐ मेरे प्यार।
Hello, viewers and learners of the course Childhood and Growing Up of B.Ed program. Welcome to this session on different perspectives in child development. In this session, we have with us Dr. Elizabeth Kuruvilla from School of Education and myself, Dr. Neel Kamal Saran, who will be discussing on this topic. There are two sessions for the discussion of this topic. In the first session, we will be discussing on lifespan perspective in child development. After watching the session, you will be able to explain the lifespan perspective and SOC model. You will be able to elaborate the characteristics of lifespan perspective, and also you will be able to explain the educational implications of lifespan perspective. With one perspective, no one can understand the development of a child. Ma'am, could you please explain the various perspectives of child development?
Yes, truly. What Dr. Neil Kamal has stated is truly correct. When we look the behavior of children, normally we may think that why some children is behaving in this way, why others are not behaving in that particular way. So in such cases, we have to think that with one perspective, no one can understand the development of children. Here comes the importance of knowing the different perspectives. When we think of perspectives, different perspectives, I would like to classify the perspectives as biological perspective, bioecological perspective, cognitive perspective, socio-cultural perspective, and lifespan perspective. And in this session, as it is very short in time, we would like to discuss with you two perspectives. In this session, we will discuss about the lifespan perspective.
So, ma'am, can you please say something about lifespan perspective?
Yes, lifespan perspective. When we hear the term itself, we can understand that it is not confined to a specific period or any age period or only one stage of development. And this lifespan perspective, from the term itself, we can understand it denotes the development of an individual throughout his or her life. That is the important. We know that individuals are subject to many changes during their entire life. It is not just confined to childhood stage or just confined to adolescent stage. But generally, in psychology, we can see that many of the emphasis is upon children and adolescent stage. What is the importance we are giving for the adulthood stage? This has many important implications in education as well as when we deal with this andragogy. So in this lifespan perspective, we can see that the human development is multiply determined and cannot be understood within the scope of a single framework. So when we look at this as a field of study, we can see that in lifespan perspective, the major emphasis is given upon the patterns of growth, change, and stability in behavior that occur the entire lifespan. So that is coming importance in the lifespan perspective.
Okay, ma'am, very well you have explained about lifespan perspective. Ma'am, what is meant by SOC model? Could you please explain?
Yeah, when we go through this lifespan perspective, we can see that there is one model of human development which was put forward by Paul Bates and his colleagues. And here, that model, the abbreviation, as Dr. Neil Kamal has stated, that is SOC. The full form is Selective Optimization with Compensation Model. So in this model, we can see the interaction between three processes that are selection, compensation, and optimization. Let us see what does each term denotes. In the selection model, we can see that the selection, it processes serve to choose goals. There will be different goals in front of human beings. So we have to search for the goals and the life task. Whereas optimization and compensation, it lead to enhancing chosen goals. What goals we have selected, how we lead towards that goal, that is important. And when we look at the basic assumption of the selective optimization with compensation model, we can see that the three processes that I mentioned earlier that generates and regulate development and aging. This comes in the compensation, selective compensation optimization model. And here we can see that these individuals, when they go through the different age ranges, the individuals select from a range of possibilities due to two reasons. The first reason, it is of elective selection, and the second, it is of loss-based selection. What do we mean by this term, the elective selection? Elective selection means that one chooses to reduce one's involvement to fewer domains as a result of new tasks. When new tasks are coming, they will reduce their involvement in few domains. Suppose, for example, a child who is entering into class 10th. So what is important is that they have to concentrate on more studies. So what is happening is that such a child may reduce their involvement in social activities, and generally they may engage, they want to keep more time for studies. In such cases, we can see that this elective selection they are utilizing. And another one, that is the loss-based selection. And when we look at the loss-based selection, we can see that one reduced involvement in some other activities as a result of expected losses in personal or environmental resources. For example, as part of aging, what is happening is that the capacity to do the work as they did in the adulthood stage is not possible. So when we look at the age-old person who is running musical concerts, we can see that such person may reduce the pieces of play and they select which play is most suitable, and then they will do the music concert. So we can see the selection, then the optimization, and how the compensation is working through this example. So this is all about the selective optimization with compensation model. And here comes the term the compensation. What does this compensation denotes? The compensation denotes the use of alternative methods when the earlier preferred method lost its effectiveness. So that is happening. That the example which I have stated earlier, it stated that the aged people, when they want to do the musical concerts, they will play only the musical terms which is they can afford within the limited time and during that particular age. And optimization, it denotes that the application of methods adopted to achieve selected goals. And this optimization involves that minimizing losses and maximizing gains. So that is an important thing in the optimization process. They have to minimize the losses and they have to maximize the gains what is happening. So this is all about the SOC model.
You have nicely explained the selective optimization compensation model. There must be certain characteristics of lifespan perspective of child development. Ma'am, could you please explain the different characteristics of child span perspective?
Okay, very good question you have put in front of me, that the characteristics of lifespan perspective. When we look at the characteristics features, we can see that there are different features of lifespan perspective. The first feature, we can classify it as the development is lifelong processes. So from the term itself, in the beginning I have stated that the lifespan perspective, here the first feature, that is development, is a lifelong process. So there is a traditional notion that childhood is the main period of development or adolescence is the main period of development, but this rejects that type of notion. What is important is that no age period dominates the development. So the developmental process is going on till the end. So development best is seen in the context of the whole lifespan. So the holistic development is important. For example, when we take the spiritual development, we cannot confine it to a particular period. It is happening throughout our entire life. So this is the first feature that we can see. Coming to the second feature, what we can see is that development is multidimensional. So that at every age, at the mind, body, interest, emotion, and relationship change and affect one another. And development occurs at various dimensions. When we look at the dimensions, we can see that is the physical dimension, there is the cognitive dimension, there is the social dimension. So there are different types of dimensions. So throughout all these dimensions, developmental changes is taking place. And each dimension, it has various components. So when we take the example of this cognitive dimension, the various components such as the memory, thinking, intelligence, information processing, attention, they are some of the components of the cognitive dimension. So in this dimension, we can see that the changes are happening on all these components. The memory part, we can see the long-term memory, the short-term memory. So the thinking process also is changing a lot. And coming to the next feature, we can see that development is multi-directional. So this multi-directional, we can state that the different capacities show different patterns of change over the time. Then development involves both growth and decline. We can see there is a peak in the growth of the development, and after that peak we can see a plateau, that is it is declining. And in one's lifetime, some dimensions expands and something we can see it is shrinking. For example, when we state that acquiring one language in early developmental stage is easy than acquiring another language in later developmental stage. So we know that in our childhood stage or in the adolescent stage, learning a new language, it is very easy. But after at the age of 50 or 60 like that, due to the memory problem or to adjustment problem, it's very difficult to learn a new
Later
language.
adulthood
Yes,
period.
later adulthood period, it is very difficult to learn a new language. So this is some kind of features that we have seen, the three features of.
Ma'am, could you please explain what are the other features? Like we have understood that development is lifelong process and it is multi-directional, multi-dimensional.
Yes.
Is there some other features also? Please
Yes.
explain.
Truly, there are other features besides the discussed features that development is characterized by lifelong plasticity. So this is an important term, that is plasticity. There, plasticity refers to the capacity to change in response to positive and negative environmental influences. How an individual is able to adjust with the positive environmental influence or to the negative environmental influence. And another thing in this aspect, that one's plasticity is not predetermined. It is changed. Then through practice, many skills can be improved. We cannot stick on with the one type of skill. The skill through training, it is improving, and then plasticity continues into later life, that aging processes not fixed, but rather we can see that it can be changed according to the environmental
Please give some
influences.
examples, ma'am.
Yes, yes. For this, we can see that the main thing is the old adults who engage in mentally alert activities. We can say that there is a general complaint that becoming old age, that our memory is reducing, we cannot recollect something. But there are some adults who are always engaged, mentally alert. they may be going for walking, they may be engaged in the chess playing. So such people, the problem of Alzheimer's disease will be very less. So that's only when we keep ourselves active and alert, many of the dimensions we can keep it very active. So this is one example for that. And there is another characteristics features of development, that development is the result of multiple causation. So here human development is the product of many interacting causes both inside and outside the person, and we can see they may be biological and they may be environmental. Some experiences are common to all at similar ages, whereas we can see that some other experiences are specialized to the particular people or the generation, or others are unique to the individual. So in some cultural pattern or societies also, we can see there are some type of experiences. For example, when we take that two children growing in the same family, if one children is a special need children, their experience may be different from the normal child. We can see that type of examples, how they are different. And another feature what we can see is that understanding development requires multiple disciplines. Because with one psychology as a discipline, we cannot understand the lifespan perspective or the developmental process of a child. Human development is influenced by various aspects ranging from biochemical reactions to historical events. Hence, the study of human development is more interdisciplinary. We cannot say that it is just confined to one discipline. So that interdisciplinarity we can see in human development. For understanding the growth of human development, we need the physiology, the biological discipline is very important. And when in the growth processes going on, the society may be entering, so the sociological aspects is important. So in every age, whether it is childhood or adolescence, what is important is that the influence or the mixing or the intervening of the various disciplines we can see.
Means through different disciplines we can understand
Yes,
the development of
the
the
developmental process of
Means
an
through
individual.
history also we
Yes,
can understand
we can
the
understand
development of
because
the child.
yes, truly, the historical events has an influence upon the development
of a
of
child.
an individual.
Okay.
So here we can see when we think of the disciplines, that is psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, biologists, historians, etc. have something to contribute to unlock the mysteries of development throughout the lifespan. For example, we can see the influence of family and school on the social development of the child, because we cannot confine it to family alone. The child is coming to the another context. The contextual influence is very much important. So the influence of the family and school, we can see the development of the child. As such, the influence of heredity and environment on the development of the intelligence of the child also. So the hereditary aspect is important as well as the environmental aspect is also important. So we can state that the developmental process cannot be confined to a particular discipline. There we can see the interference or the intervening of various disciplines in developmental process. Then there are other features also for this lifespan perspective, that is development involves both gain and loss. Gain and loss, they are intertwined during every phase of the lifespan. So here Paul Bowles states that gain inevitably bring with it loss of some kind and loss bring gain. And gain and loss, they occur jointly.
Yes.
For this, when we think of one example, we can see that the children during their infancy stage or the early adulthood stage or the infancy stage, they use the words such as Baba, some words like that. But in later on in their childhood stage, they are not able to use the same words. They will attain to pronounce some words. So these early laws, the early language, the laws in the early language, it leads to the gain in the later
language.
of words, how to pronounce the words.
Yes,
So
yes.
this is one kind that it is stated that
It
development involves both
gain and
gain
loss.
and loss. So all these are mixing together. And there is another feature of this lifespan perspective where we can see that development is contextual.
Contextual.
This is a very important thing, that is the context. All development occurs within a context such as family, orphanage, school, peer group, cities, neighborhoods, and so on. So the context of development, it is differing.
And please give us one example of this.
For this, we can see that the behavior of a child reared in a dysfunctional family is different from that of a child who is reared in a normal family setup. So, there, what is happening in the family? If it is a negative aspects or positive aspects, it will influence the child in a negative way or a positive way. So, that is an important thing that we have to think of this contextual. And more than that, each of the context is influenced by the historical, social, all the events, the environmental, what is happening in that. And we can see that the non-normative life events are unusual occurrences that affected an individual's life. So non-normative here, what I means, if I give one example, during the adolescent stage, suppose a child has undergone the teenage pregnancy or the loss of sight during childhood, it will affects the child in a negative way. Think that because of the environmental influences, the non-normative life events like teenage pregnancy will lead, which happens during the adolescent stage, will affect in the later stages. Sometimes during the marriage also, it will affect a lot in the emotional aspect of the child. So we can see that this developmental characteristics, it is very much important, and development is contextual also. We can see that the contextual in the sense that there is some time for the attaining of puberty, beginning schooling. This all depends upon the contextual. So this contextual, we can see the three types of influence: normative age graded influences, normative history graded influences, and non-normative life events. So we can see that these are the different characteristics, and that these are the different characteristics of this lifespan perspective.
Whatever we have learnt will not be fruitful if we not understand the educational implications
Yes.
of that. So ma'am, could you please mention some of the educational implications of lifespan perspective of
So
child development?
here in the educational aspects, what we have to give important is the focus on the developmental task. It is a very important thing that the individual has to attain some task. The focus on individual differences, and so that only differentiation instruction is also important, and educational goals must be responsive to social change, and the role of education to acquire the generic skills for adapting and optimizing the development in relation to social change and future change is also possible. And developmentally appropriate classroom strategies should be adopted. That is an important thing. And the qualitatively different types of training for teacher trainees should be given. How to train the child in this way. So in this session we have covered all those things. So let me have a short break. We will come very soon. Okay, let me have a short break.
Welcome back, learners. In the last session, we have discussed about the lifespan perspective of child development. In that, we understood SOC model of lifespan perspective. We have also understood the characteristics of lifespan perspective and the educational implication of lifespan perspective. In this session, we will discuss about bioecological perspectives in child development. After watching this session, you will be able to develop understanding about the bioecological perspective in child development. You will be able to classify the layers of environment that affect child development. You will be able to examine how each layer affects the development of a child, and also you will be able to identify the educational implications of bioecological perspective. Ma'am, could you please explain about bioecological perspective of child development?
Yes, bioecological perspective is an important perspective in child development. And when we think of this bioecological perspective, we can see that there are lot of intervention of this perspective when we try to understand the behavior of a child and in the developmental process. So here in this perspective, we can see that child development is conceptualized as a transactional process. So the transaction, we know that there are two things will be there, the individual and the context where the child is rearing up. So we can see that this transactional process, it is there, the interplay of the individual and the child is important. And more than this, in this context, transactional processes between the child and the context, there will be the interactions between the context as well as among the context. So this is about the bioecological perspective, and this perspective, it was put forward by Yuri Bronfenbrenner, and he has stated about this perspective, the ecology of human development. He stated that human development, it includes the concentric circles model of human development. What does this concentric circles mean? We can see the child at the center and the context of development radiating from the individual child's experience in proximal to distal order. So in the nearby order, the proximal means the nearby order, the child is at the center. Okay. So there are different context or the events happening from the near to the
Means
distant.
child is at the development.
Yeah, child is the center of the development. That is an important thing. And when we look at the screen, we can see how it is happening, where the child is at the center, what all events are there revolving around the child. So Bronfenbrenner's ecological model suggests that socialization occurs in context. We know that the first socialization occurs in the family, but there are different contexts for this socialization, and the child is the center of the concentric circles which are modeled by various layers of context. There will be various layers for the...
So what are the different layers of this bioecological model of development?
Yes, that is the normal question. Now, what are the different layers of this model?
Because you explained that there are different layers, no?
Yes,
so we want to know what are the different
layers.
Yes.
So the first layer, we can see that it is the microsystem. The second one is the mesosystem. The third one, exosystem. Fourth one, macrosystem. And then the chronosystem.
Please explain one by one what is mesosystem.
Okay, microsystem is the first one. Okay.
Please explain.
So here, in the microsystem, we can see that the child is at the center and there are other things. This is the basic of the development of the child, that the child is surrounded by other systems like the religious institutions, peers, neighborhood play area, school, daycare, health services, family, all these things comes in the microsystem.
Means family, religious institutions, school, all these
Neighborhood.
comes.
Neighborhood is an
Neighborhood.
important thing
Okay,
in the
these all comes under microsystem.
yes, microsystem. And then we can see that when we think of the family, there are different family structures. When we think of
Yes.
the traditional family, there will be parents and there will be the joint
Joint
family
families,
system,
yes, yes.
grandparents, parents, and everything. But nowadays, the family
Nuclear
structure,
family is
yeah.
there, yes.
So we can categorize it as the traditional family and the non-traditional family. And when we look at the picture, the first one, it shows that the single parent family. So which is a non-traditional family. Only one parent will be there. Other parent
Either
may
father
be
or mother.
They
Okay.
may be nurturing the child.
Okay.
So this is the feature of the single parent family. And then we can see the traditional family, that nuclear family, the father, mother, and children will be there. And then we can see that the out of the work comfort zone they have removed, and then the migrant workers will be there. And there we can see the commuted family. Because of job purpose, father may be away from the home and the mother has to take in charge of the children. And there are other family structures, the non-traditional family, the cohabitation. So this cohabitation means before marriage, they may tend to live together, to know each other and have children without marriage. So this is increasing in this modern society. So these family structures, we can see it also influence the child in some way or the other. So the interaction within the microsystem, typically they involve personal relationships with the family members, and how these relationships or the interaction is taking place, that is very important. Similarly, how child react to people in their microsystem. They learn how to adjust, how to reply, how to respond, how to interact with the family members, so that the same interaction will take place in the outside. When they come out of their family, in society also they will learn how to interact with other people, whether how they are nurtured in a lovable way, in a supportive way. These are important in the family structure. So this is all about the microsystem.
You talked about the second layer, that is mesosystem. Please explain that mesosystem.
Yes. So in this layer, we can see that the mesosystem, it encompasses the interaction of the different microsystems. Or we can say in one word
Okay,
that
it is the interaction of different
different
microsystems.
microsystems.
Okay.
So it is in essence a system of microsystems and involves linkages between home and school, between peer group and family, and between family and community. So first the interaction is taking place in the basic unit of social organization, that is the family.
Family,
So from there, the child, what type of interactions they have occurred,
their society,
wha-
school,
how they have interacted. Then they
neighborhood.
come to the next mesosystem, where we can see the different
interaction.
microsystems, the interaction between the different microsystems.
Microsystems.
So in this, in the microsystem, if a child's parents are actively involved in the friendship of that child, for example, they invite their child's friends during some festive season. Example, now we have celebrated Diwali. So during that time when the children's friends are coming and the parents are treating in a best way, in a positive way, the child will get a positive influence. So if the parents are not allowing the children to come and visit and have some kind of celebration, everything, it will negatively affect the child. So this is an important thing. Likewise, the another microsystem, that is the neighborhood in the mesosystem, which is very relevant in nowadays, that is the context of child development. Neighborhoods and schools are the two contexts in which children spend vast
So
amount
this
of time.
neighborhood comes under the next mesosystem.
So it is
doesn't
one
comes under
kind of microsystem. We can see that in the mesosystem, there is the interaction of different
Family.
microsystems.
Yes. In
So
mesosystem.
neighborhood is a microsystem which comes relevant in the mesosystem also, because
Okay.
the interaction is taking place.
Okay.
So here we can see that the forming of the attitudes, the opinions, they learn from the school system or during interaction with the neighbors. So all these things are becoming important in the mesosystem. And the neighborhood, it determines the quality and variety of physical environments. We can see that in the slum area, that is a one kind of neighborhoods what the children will
Yes,
get.
yes.
It may not be a positive experience. Maybe their pattern of interaction, their growing up situation may be negative. It may affect the child. So the children's daily lives influenced by the
Their
neighborhood context. Then the peers with whom children play, the adults they will have as role models, the amount of violence and chaos to which they will be exposed, and the schools that they will attend. That is also an important thing. So the context where the school resides, that is an important influence, exerts important influence on the development of every child. So, regarding the impact of neighborhood, what thing we have to state that the quality and the quantity of the time that they are spending, the diverse context where they are getting from the neighborhood, the recreational facilities where they are getting. If there are so much of recreational facilities for the educational entertainments is there, such children will grow in a positive way. If such type of opportunity are not there, their growth will be stunted.
Yes.
They cannot get much knowledge like that. So neighborhood socio-economic disadvantage has a detrimental impact on parental mental health, parental behavior. So these all things affect the development of the child. Again, when we look at this neighborhood, we can see that the social processes, that is the social connections between parents in the neighborhood that encourage trust, support, and a shared understanding and norms of behavior, they are determined for those living in more disadvantaged area, which then affects child outcomes, that their growth outcomes, how they interact with others. That is an important thing regarding the neighborhood. Again, when we think of this neighborhood, we can state that the neighborhood socio-economic composition may affect the quantity and quality of institutional resources available to children. Earlier, I have told that whether there is enough educational enrichment programs in the clubs will be there, or some kind of playgrounds will be there, or some kind of now these gyms, that is also the physical development. For that also this gym is very important like that. And the yoga classes if they are attending. So there the developmental aspect is different when we compare with that low socio-economic status. Children who are coming from the low socio-economic status. So then when we think of the school as a context of child development, there we can see the acquisition of knowledge and skills, social and emotional growth. Children's daily experiences of school affect their behavior, and the children's contribution to their lives as adults, including the future educational opportunities, the career choices, and the lifetime earnings. All these are based on the school context. So it is an important thing when we think of this neighborhood, which comes as one of the microsystems under the mesosystems.
Okay, ma'am, very well explained about
Yes.
microsystem and mesosystem, and we have understood about the neighborhood and the
Yes.
role of neighborhood in the
Yes,
child
how it
development.
is influencing the
So
child.
next layer, as you mentioned that the next layer is exosystem. Please explain what is exosystem.
Yeah. So the exosystem, we can see that it is exerting, it is not directly influencing the development of the child, but there is an indirect influence through the
Earlier in the
exosystem.
last two cases, they
There is
have
a direct
influence.
because the child is in that context.
Okay.
Suppose a parent's job has lost,
Okay,
and it will affect the child indirectly
indirectly, yes.
in the way that while paying fees, the child may not have enough fees to pay. And then for other expenses, the parents cannot spend much,
Yes, yes.
which indirectly affect the child. So this exosystem, it pertains to the linkages that may exist between two or more settings. So here, they may not be exerting directly, but indirectly,
Indirectly,
it affects the development of
a
the child.
child.
So Brenner, he stated that the child is interacting with this exosystem also not in a direct way, but in an indirect way. This
And
is
suppose in some family,
Yes.
when the father mother they fight also, this
Yeah.
has an impact on
Impact
the indirect impact on the
on the
children
child.
also.
Yes. The child may not be interfering,
yes,
is that, but it has negatively affected psychologically, it
Yes.
affects the child a lot.
Yes.
And then the media as a context of development, when we look that, it also exerts an indirect influence
Media,
upon the child. So here we can see that the children in the 21st century, we call them as the digital kids. They are using various digital devices. So there we can see the electronic media, how it is influencing. The increasing use of all kinds of media by the children. On the fingertips itself, they are
like
using
multimedia
that,
phones,
multimedia fonts. And creation and use of media designed for children aged 2 and under also. We cannot tell that this age of children are using. Those who are born itself, they are playing
yes,
with
yes,
this
yes.
different kinds of media. So this is an important thing which affects the
I have seen that when the child is not eating, now what
Yeah.
did the mother does? Ki
Yeah.
she gives the mobile
to the
watch
child
the
or
videos,
watch the videos and
so
then
that he or
feeding
she
them.
can watch the video and she
then
can feed.
having the
Yes.
food. So we can see that from the childhood days itself, whatever be the age,
They don't eat food even
Yeah.
without mobiles.
without mobiles, in such condition they may enter into. So we can see the influence of media, how it is. But we cannot say that there is only negative effect, there is positive effects,
Positive
that multitasking.
Yes.
We can see that the children, the young generation, how much multitask they can
And
use.
we get a lot of information through these
Information also,
multimedia phones.
multimedia
also. It is
phones.
a source of
Yeah.
information.
And it is a source of information also.
Yes.
And we can see how do media use, it affects children's cognitive development.
Yes, yes.
So when we think of this media influence on the cognitive development of children, there we can see that the games which children are playing, we can see that how fast they have to play. So their psychomotor ability is increasing. They are able to do in a fast way, that speed
That means along with cognitive development, psychomotor
development is
also
also
taking
increasing,
place. Yes.
and moving the fingers in a speed way, their brain is also working in a very
Yes, yes.
speed way.
Yes.
So that thing we can see through this multitasking and through playing games and everything. And more than that, at the same time, the children learn how to divide the attention.
Yes.
So divided attention, and at the same time concentrating on the particular task. This is an important thing what the children is attaining through this media. So divided attention requires children to multitask because they must attend to multiple stimuli in order to succeed at video gameplay. And then they will develop the spatial skill which improve when children play video games
Yes, sir.
that require visualization of spatial fields because they want to attack the next person.
Yes.
So which way they have to go, how much space will be there. So there will be different kinds of video games that is taking place. So that also will develop that
Multidimensional development is taking place,
yeah,
through media.
multitasking and the
Yes.
spatial sense,
Uh,
how much they will develop like that. So this is all about the exosystem.
Now the another layer is microsystem. Please explain that also.
Yes. The macro system, when we think of this macro system, it is the largest context.
Macro means large.
Large. So this, and the most distant collection of people and places to the children that still have significant influence on them. So this, for example, if I state that children in war-torn areas will experience a different kind of development than the children who is in the normal context, normal developmental context. So these war-torn area children, they are more defendable and they have more courage because of the contextual influence. So this macro system, the ecological system, is composed of the children's cultural patterns and values, and we can see that it's specifically the dominant beliefs and ideas as well as political and economic systems. All those things exerts a greater influence on the development of the child. So this macro system is also an important system in the development of the child.
Next layer is chrono system.
Yes.
Please explain that.
This chrono, the term itself denotes that the chrono means time. There is a
Time. It is
time
related
sense.
to time.
Yeah, related to time. So this chrono system, it adds the dimension of time which demonstrate the influence of both change and constancy in children's environment. And suppose when we look the pandemic period, it is a very good example for the chrono system. How it affects, because during the pandemic period, look at the migrant workers' children. Their children, they have to migrate from one place to the other because of in search of food, in search of other facilities like that. So it has an impact or influence on the development of such children. So this thing is important thing by studying the various events that occurs, the historical events, the war. It has exerts negatively on the developmental aspects of any individual. Bronfenbrenner's ecological system theory is able to demonstrate the diversity of interrelated influences on children's development based on the various events that occurs at different periods of time. So this is an important thing in the aspect of the development of the child.
Okay. Ma'am, you have very well explained the different layers of bioecological model of child development, that is microsystem, mesosystem,
Yes.
exosystem, chronosystem and macrosystem.
Yes.
So can you mention some of the educational implications of this bioecological perspective of child development?
Yes, that's a good question what you have raised. And thinking of these educational implications, there arises some questions that how do we prepare teachers to teach in the particular context in classroom? How do we train the teachers? Because whether the teachers are aware about this interference or the intervention of these type of layers in the development of the child. So the most important thing, a teacher has to understand the background of the children. It may be consist of different backgrounds of children, and there may be innumerable children, maybe 30, 40 children, and it is an important thing to understand the background of each learner, understand student learning needs. So when we understand the background, the teacher can diversified types of strategies can be adopted in classroom. Then the teaching
This model says that we should understand the background of the
of the
learner.
of each learner so that
As a
we
teacher,
can adopt different strategies in the classroom. In the early perspective, we have seen that the age appropriate strategies should be adopted, but
your
here
background
according
of the-
to the context of the children, the learning needs of the learner, we have to adopt different strategies in the classroom. And then teaching concepts by using that student vocabulary, because they are coming from different backgrounds. So the vocabulary of the students, the teacher has to learn how to teach the different concepts in front of the learners. Then the culturally responsive pedagogy, that the children are coming from different cultures, and so the cultural responsive pedagogy is important in this case. And the teacher plays a major role in determining the meaning and sensitivity in the classroom. So how does the teacher teach the learner in a different way? So this culture and the context of learner, their abilities, their background, the socio-economic status, everything should be understood by the teacher in order to teach the children according to that. So in conclusion, what I want to say is that children seek opportunities for cognitive stimulation, purposeful social exchange, emotional development, and cultural tolerance. So in such cases, what is important is that to bring the needs of children in the center stage, we have to ask ourselves some questions like that. We teachers have to ask ourselves, whom we teach,
what
what
we
we
teach,
teach, how we teach,
and
and
when
when
we
we teach.
teach.
So this decides
We should
the
ask to
strategies.
ourselves.
Yeah, these strategies that should be adopted in the classroom. Hope that you learners have understood properly about the lifespan perspective as well as the bioecological perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.